And so Kerry is the Senior Manager of Special Projects for the ARC. And we're going to ask her to explain to us what the ARC is. But she is here today to talk with us about Wings for Autism and Wings for All.
Right.
And what that amazing program is. But Kerry, first of all, welcome to the show. Did we say your last name correctly?
You didn't. It's Mauger, but that's okay. Everybody says it wrong.
Okay, Mauger.
The one question we should have asked before, but didn't ask. So Mauger?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Kerry Mauger.
Okay, love it. And we will try to get that right from now on. And Kerry, tell us a little bit about the ARC.
So the ARC is one of the largest nonprofits serving and advocating for people with disabilities. We started about over 65 years ago as a grassroots organization. It was actually developed as a bunch of parents came together to kind of create more supports for their children, and they wanted to live their children. They want their children to live a more fulfilled and inclusive life. And back, 65 years ago, there wasn't much in place as far as programs or supports or resources for these families. So they gathered together, created the ARC, and from there they just kind of over time grew and grew and grew to be what we have today. And so today we, serve over 1 million people throughout the U.S. We are in, I think, 48 states and Washington, D.C. So we've come quite a way in 65 years.
650 chapters. That's a lot of chapters.
A lot of chapters.
When people want to find out more about the ARC, where should they go?
thearc.org. And you can go there, and we have all of our different programs. We have different resources, all about us on there.
Okay. And now you've come up with this very innovative program called Wings for Autism, Wings for All. Is that correct?
Yes. So Wings for Autism or Wings for All. So I should probably just start by saying it's the same exact program. Everything is 100% the same. It's open for people with autism or disabilities. It's just we let each local area choose whether they want to call it Wings for Autism or Wings for All. The program was originally conceived by one of our local chapters, the Charles River Center up in Massachusetts. So a little background about how the program actually started. So there was a family that was served by that chapter that went on a trip to Disney World. They had 2 sons. One had autism, one didn't. And they never flown before, and they just didn't think about it. And so when they got to the airport and they realized that their son was not going to be able to make it through TSA, he, had a meltdown, and it was just kind of too overwhelming, in the airport with the lights and the crowds and the different noises and things like that. So the mother and the one child had to go home and, not go on the trip, and the father and the other child went on the trip. And so, it was a lot of, staring by families and embarrassment for them, and they didn't want the other child to be resentful of the other child. There was also wasted money, so they approached our local chapter and said, if we experience this, there's got to be other families that are kind of in the same boat as we are, and so that's where they partner with the local Massport Authority and the Boston Logan Airport. That's where our first event and program was kind of created. And after a lot of local press from that event and kind of, PR and families kind of talking to other families, they approached us, the national office, and we took it out in 2014 nationally and kind of started expanding it to other areas of the U.S.
Well, you talked about some of the things that this particular family faced. What are some of the things that parents of children on the spectrum, what are some of the things they have to take into consideration before making travel arrangements?
So, like I said, the airport is traveling is great, but the airport is a very stressful place for anybody with or without the disability or autism. So, the more you get them acquainted to it and the more practice, the better off they are going to be, and the more successful, the better chance they have being successful at air travel. So I would say one of the things that is the lights. I mean, there are bright lights all over the place. There's crowds, there's loud noises, there's the TSA security screening process can be a big issue with the TSA officers maybe not knowing some of the signs of autism or signs of disabilities and how to react to it. For example, not having eye contact does not mean that you are hiding something, or, they maybe can't follow directions if you aren't so direct with some of your statements. So things like this, which are small skills that we teach, the aviation professionals and the TSA agents when we partner with them, are things that I think in the long run can help these families, get through this process a lot easier. We've also found that families have trouble with the noises on the airplane. We always recommend bringing the noise-canceling headphones for them, just to kind of block out all the different noises and sounds and, people chewing or talking around you. There's also the vibrations on the airplane. There's the jet bridge has also been an issue for some families where, they can get through TSA security just fine, but for some reason that jet bridge going down to the airplane is, it's a small tunnel, it's enclosed, you don't know what's on the other side, so it can be kind of scary, and it can take them a few times to kind of work up the courage to kind of get through and realize that it'll be okay.
And there's so much anxiety for everybody that goes along with
Flying,
this.
of course.
I mean, even the general public has anxiety, and I think about the whole TSA thing, that it seems like to me, every time I go to a different, even the same airport, depending on what time of day, the rules are different. Mm-hmm. Do I take my shoes off? Do I not? Do I have to put my phone and my computer in the thing? So people are distracted and anxious, and there's always this sort of sense of when you get to TSA that you're going to get graded on how well you did, right? Like, did you know, like, were you able to do what they say? And I love that the TSA agents think that they're helping us out, and they stand there and they sort of bark orders out, but they've said it so many times that they're not even articulating anything. So it says, and you go, what did they say? What did they say? Put the computer in there or not?
Right.
My husband and I will stand there and have this thing about what do we do? So we're anxious.
Yeah, of course.
And of course, our kids pick up on that.
Yeah.
So there's that kind of a thing too. But let's talk a little bit about what you guys do to help
how it actually works.
Yeah, so how it actually works. So my organization, the ARC of the U.S., partners with a airport, an airline, and a local chapter of the ARC.
Yeah, it froze for a second.
You were frozen for a minute.
You were frozen for a second, but we were still hearing you, so it's okay. And now you're unfrozen. It looked like a really cool ventriloquist thing. We got you back there.
Well, anyways, as long as you can still hear me,
Yeah, we can still hear you.
Okay, so go back to how it all works.
Okay, so we partner with a local airport, airline, TSA, and a local chapter of the ARC. So my organization, the ARC, I'm at the national level in Washington, D.C., and we have state and local chapters all throughout the U.S., like I mentioned earlier. So we'll partner with the other chapter is closest to that airport to kind of bring the program there. And so we arrange it so that, families can come to the airport, usually on a weekend, but sometimes during the week, and they run through all of the steps as if they were going to go on a real flight. So we want it to be somewhat realistic because we want them to be successful when they do take a flight. So, they go get their boarding pass, they go through TSA security, they have to put their items on the conveyor belt so that they learn that they have to, get it back on the other side. They have to, go through the machine and put their hands up, things like that. And then they find their way to the gate area. There's usually a little bit of wait time at the gate area because, as we all know, waiting at the airport is a very big part of the experience.
Yes.
And once they find their gate area and they wait a little bit, they do the regular boarding calls. They board the plane. On board, the flight attendants will run through their regular safety checks. They close all the overhead bins because those always make a really loud noise. And we want them to be aware of that sound so it's not startling for them. They go over the safety procedures. Sometimes they'll run the beverage cart up and down. And then from there, we just let them explore the plane and interact with the flight attendants and pilots. We want this to be a learning experience not only for the families, but also for the flight attendants and pilots and, aviation professionals as well. So we encourage both of them, to talk to families, to ask questions. Many times this is their first time on a plane, so we want the families to ask questions, and we want the flight attendants to ask questions as well. So it's a learning experience on both ends. Many times we'll open the cockpit so they can see that. That's for our younger participants. That's one of the biggest perks. I shouldn't even say the younger ones. I did that once, and it was very exciting to see the inside of the cockpit as well.
Yeah.
Oh, I had one of the worst experiences of my life that I'll always remember with my son on a plane where when he was little, the pilots let him in the cockpit. We were the first ones on the plane because we were the last seat on the plane.
Right.
And then he did not want to leave the cockpit.
Yeah.
And getting him out of it was almost impossible. He was flailing, shoes fell off. We had to go all the way then down the aisle, and for the entire hour flight, he had a tantrum.
And I'm sure the pilots were thrilled that they had said, come on in.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't mean to laugh because I know how stressful it is, but it's one of those
I'll never
things
forget
that
it.
it's like the rest of the world can get on a plane and not worry about that, but now you have anxiety, I'm sure, every time you get to go on a plane, even though that hasn't happened again.
Right.
'Cause it's one of those things, it's indelibly in your head.
Absolutely.
But if he had had an opportunity to go and see a plane and stay in as long as he wanted to, which if you're not actually flying someplace, I'm sure that they give them some time, right, Kerry? Where they can sit, and then he could have sat there and looked at it, and then eventually it could have been like, well, okay, now let's go get lunch.
Right.
And then it would have been okay. But everything, see, this is the thing about, what I love about your program, Kerry, is that in the real life situation, everybody is on a time thing, and everybody is anxious about that, and there's no time for anything to go amiss. And even before something goes amiss, the parents of a child flying with autism, we experience some of that anxiety. And the staff experience anxiety if you do something that throws their timetable off. Because there's planes the rest of the day that are based on your plane taking off at a certain time. So taking it outside of the equation, which is what we do in ABA all the time, right? Take it outside of the equation and make it so that we can stop at a moment in time and deal with an issue and strengthen it. It's a really smart thing to do. Now, how long does this sort of event usually take place? Like, is it an hour?
For a normal event, from start when they check in to finish, I would say is roughly about 3 hours or so. We always recommend that if they have a boarding time of say 1 o'clock, we always recommend that they come about an hour or so early so that they can go through the whole process and take their time doing it and kind of explore the airport if they want a little bit more too, and kind of that way they're not rushed and they can kind of go through every step at their own time and ask as many questions as they need to. And then they're on the plane for about maybe 30, 40 minutes or so. It's not a terribly long time on there. And then sometimes they will have, the pilots, flight attendants hanging around afterwards. Sometimes they'll do a little reception afterwards for the families to kind of, get together and chat about the event. So I would say about 3 hours is total from time of checking in to, at the very end.
And
they're actually only on the plane for about 30 minutes.
And this training is as much for the airline and the TSA staff as it is for the families.
Yes. So we have a small training that we do with the aviation and TSA employees prior to the actual event. And I like to call it a disability 101 type training where we just go over some characteristics of autism and disabilities in general and just, we lay out different scenarios and behavior issues or something like that might happen and how they can best accommodate it. Sometimes it's just the way that you say things, your tone of voice, or the way you phrase things that can make a huge impact and difference on this experience for our families and for the, airplane and airline employees as well. We also always tell our families, ask, before you come to the airport, ask if you think pre-boarding is something you might need. Explain your situation to the flight attendants as soon as you get there and see if pre-boarding is something that, may be beneficial to your family. And we also, on the flip side, tell, that when we in our training, pre-boarding, while you sometimes may need to pay extra for, should be something that should be offered to these families because it's going to make the experience and the process much easier on them and much easier on the other people flying and much easier on the employees as well. On the other side, too, I also say sometimes it's better to be the last person on the plane. Yeah. So sometimes, maybe the father can go on with the luggage and the other parent can come on last, or maybe you just wait till the last person. So that way you don't have to wait in line. You can just literally get on the plane, sit down, and, be ready to take off. So it kind of takes away some of that waiting time on the plane. We also recommend, which a lot of people don't know about, is the Tsa Cares Program. You can call TSA 72 hours prior to your flight and get on-site support through the TSA process into your gate area. And a lot of companies don't know about that. So I think also it's just educating them to different resources that they have. Different airlines have different supports that they'll offer too. It varies per airline and per airport. But it's just knowing that and knowing to go look at those websites to kind of figure out what is available for me in my area and how can I make this process easier.
Now, do you recommend that families call in advance to the airline and explain they have a child with autism and that will be traveling?
I mean, if you think that there might be an issue on the plane, or if you're worried or nervous, I mean, it can't hurt. I always say, like, it's better to be over prepared and then have people know and be, more prepared for your travel than to be under prepared. So I don't think it's necessary all the time, but I think if you are very worried about it, it definitely can't hurt. And if you have any questions too, you can call the airline and just or call Tsa Cares and, run through all of your questions with them so you can kind of get that out of the way before you come to the airport.
How would we find out if one of these events is happening in an area nearby us, Kerry?
So we list all of our events on our webpage. It is thearc.org/wings. And all of our upcoming events are listed there. We usually open registration about, I would say, a month or so before the event. But you can also always email me. My contact information is on that webpage as well. And I can tell you if we have events scheduled, in the future in your area.
Do you recommend that people do this if they have plans to fly in the near future, or do you recommend that everybody do this and do it repeatedly so that when they do fly, it's not like this scramble to get this training in?
Oh, I would say both. I mean, if you have an upcoming flight, definitely that way you can kind of see what parts of the process or steps you need to take to be prepared to, or what you need to work on, or maybe everything's just going to run smoothly. So I would say definitely if you're taking a flight. If you're not taking a flight and you just want to see how your child reacts to the environment and see if flying is a possibility, I would definitely recommend you come as well, because sometimes people will come and they will realize that this part of the process was very difficult in my child, and maybe we need to come again next year or need more practice. So it kind of allows you to kind of test out the whole environment, the whole process, and kind of see what needs to be worked on and what doesn't. And if you need extra practice, it allows you that flexibility to kind of come back again to do the extra steps.
I gotta say, and I love that you have it for all. I'm just gonna tell a quick story that my husband's not gonna appreciate.
Okay.
My son has flown a lot now.
Right.
He's flown a lot more than his dad. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, just recently I had to take a couple of flights where I didn't have my son, and it was interesting because I from very early age, that when he could read, I would have him read, and I would say, which gate do we have to be at, so that he would learn how to do it so that someday he could fly by himself. And but my husband doesn't fly as much with us. We tend to go places, for work or whatever. Or when my mom was dying, we flew a lot.
Right.
And he didn't always come with us. And so last year for my son's robotics team, we flew with the team to Las Vegas. And on the way there, we had TSA pre-check. So that we just had to walk through.
Right.
And I didn't think anything much about it. And my husband said, we don't have to take off our shoes. And I said, no, we don't have to take off our shoes. And he was like, wow, that wasn't hard. And we went through and it was no big Megillah, right? Then we're in Vegas for like 3 days and the team kept winning and we kept getting closer to our plane time. And it was sort of terrible because the team lost and then we just could make it to our plane if we hurried and grabbed a bunch of cabs. But we were running in the airport and we get up there and we don't have TSA pre-check anymore. And I'm dealing with the bags and dealing with getting kids to the, and like it's all hairy, scary, whatever. And I didn't have time to say to my husband, we don't have TSA pre-check this time, or I did and he didn't hear me, I don't know what. But now we're at the pre-check and he's just sailing through. And the guy is like, there's all this commotion and the guy is like, step back. And my husband's like, what are we doing? What's going on? And the guy actually got out, because if you don't step back the first time they get out the board. And now my husband's like, what is happening? And the guy is like, dude, take off your shoes, take off your belt, take off your, put your wallet in the
assumed the pre-check was the way it was going to be.
And nobody had told him anything different.
Right.
So he was just, but this is a thing about not knowing what the rules are in a high stress situation. And so now my husband is arguing with the guy with the barricade, and my husband doesn't hear as well, nor do I. And the guy is saying, like, take off your belt. And so then my husband would take off the belt and he'd stick it through it. One thing at a time through the thing, and then finally the guy was like, and he went through one time and he set it off. And
at least you can laugh about this now.
Oh my gosh, he's not appreciating me saying this. But each time he would come back and everybody's like, we got to make this plain. And there'd be something else. He's like, like most men, he's got more in his pockets than most women carry in a pocketbook, right? And then he'd pull the keys out. And the keys would go through in one little bowl by itself. And then they were like, is there a wallet? Is there, one by one, he's sending it through, and he's like,
and everybody in line is like, who is this person?
Yes,
right?
and he felt like an idiot, and I was laughing, doubled over, hysterical thing. Like this should be on a sitcom, because at some point, I think he threw his wallet down without the little cup thing, the bowl thing, and he was like, what else do you want? Do you want me to strip? What do you? But because he just didn't know what the rules were.
Right.
And nobody really explains it to you at TSA.
No, they don't.
Sort of assume.
No.
And the rules are different every time you go.
Right.
So the fact that they just assume that everybody knows is sort of funny to me. It is a recipe for and this was my husband, who is not on the spectrum, and all I could think was how frustrating this must be for so many people.
Oh, yeah.
So I love the fact that you do this, and that anybody who, I'd love to enroll my husband.
It's a great program. You'd like to enroll your husband.
Because, and he was like, what do you mean the rules are different? Why do we get to go through the other time and this time we don't? And all I could say to him is, the rules are different. We have a different pass. It's a different airport. It's a different TSA person. You just have to pay attention to the rules. And he's like, the rules should be posted. There should be where is the visual schedule? Where,
It's also practice for families.
Yes, and during the high stress situation. So anyway, he's if he's watching, he's like,
we'll have to get him signed up for this.
Yeah.
Well, Kerry, this is a really great program, and we want to thank you for joining us today and telling us about it.
No, thank you for having me.
And let's do the websites one more time.
Yeah, one more time.
Yep, it's thearc.org/wings.
Thank you so very much. We really appreciate what you're doing. It's a great service for the community.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thank you for joining us today.